Hello and welcome to Creator Toolbox on today, Tuesday, June 15th. Thanks everyone for being here. This is the show where we give you the tools that you need to build apps on the Now platform. So before we get any further, let's do some introductions. Chuck.
Good morning, creators, or afternoon or evening, wherever you are and whenever you are. My name is Chuck Tomasi, Senior Developer Advocate at ServiceNow. Been here since 2010. Go back as a customer a couple years before that. Have a long history of IT and project management and programming stuff that goes decades back. So, old man at the wheel, here to show you potentially some new tricks.
All right, and my name is Brad Tilton. I'm also a developer advocate with a developer program here at ServiceNow. I've been developing on the platform for a long time also, and am excited to get into today's show about Flow Designer. So Chuck, why don't you tell us what we're going to be doing today?
Sure thing, Brad. I don't think we could put out enough Flow Designer information at this point. Everybody is just hungry for it. It's like UI Builder. It's like more. This is new. People want to adopt it, and we're happy to provide that information. And one of the things in our backlog is we're looking at doing a Flow Designer series, take you from 0 to 100 and show you all those nuances. And I know, regardless of who does this, we're going to learn on this end as well, because there's always something like, oh, I didn't know you could do that.
Yeah, well, Flow Designer's it's been around for so long, and every release, like something big gets added to it. So, if you looked at it 2 years ago, it's a lot different now than it was 2 years ago. It's a lot different than it was 1 year ago.
Yeah.
So there's always stuff that's being added, and there's cool stuff coming pretty soon here. So yeah, it's exciting.
We're going to show you some basics today. So there are times when you need an action that just doesn't exist out of the box. And we're going to show you how you can create that, a little library of utilities, or libraries if you want. We're not going to get into any integrations at this point. This is commonly where these collections of actions, which we call spokes, and spokes is part of the integration hub nomenclature, but you don't need integration hub to create spokes. The first time I ran into this is when I just wanted to create or add two numbers together. Like, we don't have a way to add two numbers. And that gets a little complex, which I'll show you in a little bit, is the data types. If you're adding two integers or two floating points, or what's the return method. So I'll get into that in a little bit. But that's what we're going to build today, is just a couple of spokes, or a couple of actions in a collection of spokes. And then we'll apply one of those to a UI action based on a video we did earlier to multiply a couple of numbers together. So, and then I'll show you something that I built, I think it's almost 3 years ago, a little collection of utilities. Just get your juices flowing of what you could build, handy actions that you might want in your library. I also learned something just a few minutes before the cameras went rolling, so I'll share that information with you when we get to that, about global and scoped, and everybody's always interested in that. So what do you say we get started, Brad?
All right, let's do it.
Okay, put down the drink, find that magic share screen button, and share screen number 2. Here we go, share, boom. Okay, I am on my personal developer instance, or my PDI, which I got for free from developer.servicenow.com. Ding! Never miss an opportunity to plug something. We had a trivia, or not a trivia question, but a question of the week on our other podcast that we do, Craig Stepp and I do on Sunday nights. Says, what's the best free thing about the internet that you recommend to somebody? And Steve London, one of our developers in the ecosystem from Sweden, said a PDI. So he's also listened to our personal podcast that we do called Technorama. And I was like, wow, we just really crossed the streams with work and pleasure podcasts here. It was a lot of fun. So thank you, Steve, for that one. And let me bring up the PDI. And what I'm going to start with is creating a scope. Now, there's a number of ways you can create a new app in ServiceNow. You can go into Studio. You can go into AES. In fact, why don't we do that just for fun? App Engine Studio. We'll show off some of the new toys. We've done episodes on App Engine Studio before, so I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but I just want to build the framework or the scope or the namespace, if you will, for this application. I got to move a zoom window out of the way. And up here is create app, and I get to name this whatever I want because I'm on my PDI. So I'm going to name this, CTB, Creator Toolbox. Hey, that's a pretty good name for a spoke now that I think about it. And let's put an icon on there just so when we see it, where's my demo data, tool icon? We can see that when we invoke this on Flow Designer, it will have its own set of icons for these utilities that we're going to build. Continue, it creates the scope. You know what I should have done? Darn it, I'm gonna back up one step. I missed one little tip that I wanted to do. Okay, if you accidentally create an app and you don't want to, you can go to sysscope.list. This is live, so I get to back up. I'm not sure why it jumped into Studio. Here's my applications, and I want CTB. There it is. I'm just going to delete it. I am in the CTB scope. You can see up here. So it will allow me to edit it, and I want to reset and start over. I've done this a few times. Oops, not the right app name. If you end your scope name with the word spoke, it has two advantages, because CTB might be a little generic for your organization. And they go, Chuck, what is this? Especially if I were to look at that in 2 years and go, I have no idea. So I'm going to delete that app and try it again. So rewind, apologies for the delete, but now you know how to delete and reset an app in Dev. Go back to that again, back to App Engine Studio, create app, and I'm going to call this one CTB Spoke. That way it's a little more self-descriptive when you look at your list of apps or your scope list. A spoke is really just a scope. I know those words are very similar, but a spoke relates to the actions in Flow Designer, but they sit inside of a scope, which is everything in a scoped app. Now, the reason I added spoke was to make it a little more descriptive. Obviously, I could have put a better description on there. I have created that namespace, and when I look at that again in the list of applications, I see on my application manager list, I will probably have one here in development called CTB Spoke. Come on, load them up. Not installed, not installed. In development, our budget, CT util spoke. I'll get to that bow tie one a little later. There it is, CTB Spoke. So the word spoke on there helps me, but when you look at it in Flow Designer, it will not append that word spoke onto all the menu options, which I'll show you in a bit. So it's got a little advantage, and the system is smart enough to ignore it when it needs to. Now that I've got that, let's go into Flow Designer. Again, I could have done that same process of creating the application through Studio as well. So under Process Automation is Flow Designer, and I'm going to go New Action. Now, we look at the breakdown of how flows work. A flow has a trigger, and when that trigger happens, it uses it runs several actions and some logic. A subflow is like a flow, but it doesn't have a trigger. It has inputs that you pass it, runs some logic and some actions, and sends some outputs. So it's like a little subroutine. The actions are those atomic elements. So when you build an action, keep it as simple as possible. It's really tempting to want to build lots of inputs on this. I am going to start with a simple one called multiply two integers. And it's going to be part of my CTB Spoke. We can give this a good description.
That says multiple integers.
Thank you. Darn motor skills. Multiply, take two integers and find the product. I think that's the name you get when you get an output.
That is the name. It's been a while, but yeah.
I'm surprised I remember my third grade math. You don't use that term that often. Let's see, sum, difference, product. What's a divide? Is it the dividend? I can't remember. I know the remainder. I don't remember what. There's a trivia question for the chat. What do you call it when you divide two numbers? What's the output?
Somebody will tell us.
Okay, so this is the Action Designer. If you haven't seen this before, quick orientation. We've got a number of steps that we can put on the left. We'll insert those in a bit. We've got inputs and outputs. It is a little function, if you will. It's a subroutine that we're going to use. And the first thing we need to do is define what we're going to pass in. Well, I said I'm going to multiply two integers, so let's create two integers. And we'll call these simply number 1, and it automatically puts an underscore in there for us because that is the variable name. This is a label, so we may want to make it a little more human readable with perhaps some proper case. And it is going to be an integer. Don't ask me about all these other data types. I don't know what an integer string is supposed to be.
Integer.
We want that as mandatory. And I'm going to create another input.
Quotient.
A quotient. Thank you. Abdul for the win.
Your number 1.
I just noticed that. Thank you. Not sure how that happened, but that is also going to be an integer. That would have caused problems. So mandatory. We have our inputs, and probably a good time while you're thinking about it is.
Ooh. Should you do, can you set default values on the input here?
I could. What were you thinking of for the, using this little up and down arrow?
Maybe 2 and 3, just so that we
don't have to type them in every time?
I think it's just a nice practice to set default values. It's something that when you go to test it, especially if we have some troubles and have to run it, 10 times, you don't have to type it in every time.
I should hope I don't have to run this 10 times because it's so simple, but it is a good practice. Yes. Good practice. I've got my inputs. This is a good time to think about your outputs so you don't forget, because this is one of the most often forgotten things. And my output is going to be the product. Now, this one doesn't automatically give you a variable name, so we are going to name it. And it is also going to be an integer. I don't know what the point of making this mandatory or not is, but sure, we'll make it mandatory. This one you don't give a default value. That would not prove anything.
It's kind of strange.
Yeah, I think somebody just reused a widget or component or something somewhere. So let's go into the logic. What do I do when I get these two inputs? This little plus over here lets me add a new step, and I have lots of choices to choose from, lots of options to choose from. Come on, I did click it. Where to go, where to go? Not on some other screen. There it is.
There we go.
Sometimes when you're doing demos, things run slowly. I can do a lot of these things without script, like looking up records or waiting for a condition, or you get the idea. But this time I am going to do a little bit of script because I don't have another way to multiply two numbers. If I did without script, I would use it. So I need to define what the step inputs are, which means these are the action inputs. Think of these as like global variables to this action. I need to consume those or tell this script function how to access them. So I'm simply going to call this number 1 and drag the data pill here and create this one called number. These are variable names, so don't use spaces. Uppercase doesn't matter. This associates these variables, which will be accessible down here in the script. Then it becomes a simple exercise of var val1 equals. I don't trust JavaScript any farther than I can throw it. So I always do type casting myself. I want to make sure I've got an integer. So inputs, number 1, base 10, just to make sure it doesn't come out as like base 8. Then var val2 equals parse int inputs dot number underscore 2. I'm going to zoom in on that just a little bit, make it easier to read for our mobile friends. And then outputs dot product equals val1 times val2. That's how we denote a multiplication in JavaScript. And you're going, Chuck, that looks crazy outline. The indentation is driving me nuts. select all, Shift Tab is your friend. Now, don't forget, getting back to the variables, this was a global action variable. Did I forget to save or something?
There's a typo in there on your line 4, %.
Parse int.
Yep.
That's why I didn't line up. That's
Thanks,
why
Dave.
alignment is nice. that jumped out. I need to pass this product variable out of this step. So I do that by naming this variable down here the same as this up here. Now, normally I would have done this first so that I have them all lined up. This is a label, so let's make it a nice looking label. And then it is going to be a type integer. When you multiply 2 integers together, you get an integer. That says, okay, this little script is going to take 2 inputs that happen to be the same as the action inputs. They don't necessarily have to be, because you may have 25 actions in this, or excuse me, 25 steps lined up here on the left. Some are using some variables, some are using the outputs of other steps, some are using, it can get really fun with what's passing what to where. This is a very, very simple example, I understand. Now, the final thing is go to your action output and tell it to use the script step output. Just passing this information back and forth. Okay, I took 2 variables from the actions input, put them into the script step, multiplied them, passed a product out of the script step to the action output. I think I said that all just fine.
Yeah, the
sounded good to me.
The outputs are generally where I leave something out, because it's your step needs an output and then your action needs an output, and then you have to tie them together. And a lot of times I forget to tie them together because I'm like, oh, I named them the same. But that's an important thing to check.
Good point. It gets me every once in a while too. Like, oh, I forgot. Especially when you go to the next step, which is text. When you test, there's our default values, and I'll run this and go, why did I get no output? Is there something wrong with the script? And it's usually, oh, I forgot to set the outputs. Run test. 3 times 2 should be. Let's go look at the execution details. There's a Jeopardy answer for you. And my product is empty. Oh, look at this. Product L.
Or is that product 1?
Product 1, product L, whatever that is. Terrible font. Let's go fix it.
We got
oops. Got to get into the right. Did I lose Flow Designer?
Oh, you closed the
I closed the window. I meant to close the tab. Shame on me. Okay, so actions. I sort by updated, so my work today is always at the top. And who did I type wrong? Let's edit the outputs. Not that one.
Is it the output of the script?
Is it output down here?
Oh,
it is.
It gave you the little the one on the end for some reason.
Product. I can't retype that for whatever reason.
So you can change it in your script.
Yeah, that would be one way to do it. I'm sorry. I'm going to be really OCD on this. Product. I don't know why it wouldn't let me edit it. Okay, so product. Anytime I mess with an input or an output, I always like to ensure that deleting it here didn't have some downstream ramifications, which it did. Okay, save that. I've been caught by that too. Because I don't know what
be an integer, or is the string okay?
Oh, did I put string again?
You did not change it on the
Cursors. Okay. This is when it's nice to have somebody else's eyes watching. Okay, integer, save. Taking longer than I thought to make this simple little test. That always happens in real life, though. 3 times 2 should be still nothing. Let's go through the steps. Did I get an output? I got an output of an integer 6 from the step.
Well, I wonder if when you changed the type, did it
delete it on me again? Oh, man. Watch those outputs and inputs, kids. They'll get you every time. See, we even tried to grease the wheels ourselves and go, watch out, and we got caught by it. I think we're showing everything that can go wrong today, Brad.
Those default values are coming in handy now.
Yeah, they are. I don't have to type everything anymore. Okay, so 2 times 3 is 6. Let's go change one of the values to 3 times 3. Run the test again. Look at the execution details. I absolutely love the test feature on Flow Designer. It is 9. We are now winning. Okay? So I've made one simple action. Let's publish that. I'm fairly confident that it's working the way we intended. I'd like to go make another one. Oh, something I forgot to show you. On the properties, when I created this, there is a category. And you can put these into categories. So if you get this library, let's call this CTB, 6 months, 2 years down the road, it's now got 50 actions in it, and they're all sorted alphabetically, which makes it a big mess. You can categorize them and break them down into little blocks. So do I have one called math? No. So let's go and create a new one. Just like any other reference field, I'll create a new one by opening up the magnifying glass, math functions, or for our Brits, maths functions. They get the extra S on there because it's mathematics. Update that. And I'm going to go and test it because it is officially published. Let's go to we'll create a real quick subflow. Subflow name, test, multiply. CTP, we're not going to categorize this one, but you could. And then if I pick my action, on the actions menu, we now have my CTP with the screwdriver and wrench. There's my multiply 2 integers, and look here. It's underneath the math functions category. So I could have math function, I could have system function, I have graphics function, I could have all kinds of different categories that I put in there.
And is the category searchable? If you type in math, does it?
You know what? I don't know. No. It looks like it's hitting just the action names. Darn. But here's an example of what I built a couple of years ago. So to show you what could be built, I've got a date function where I could add a month, I could add a year, I could add 7 days, I could add 20 minutes onto that by using this function. Pop that out and give me a date time. Could be a data pill, could be a hard-coded value. You get the idea. I can add, subtract, or, well, I guess can't really divide dates, really. There's a duration, so I could say, do you want 10 days? Do you want 2 weeks? And then behind the scenes, it's using some GS, glide date time util stuff, whatever, to make those operations happy. But you can tell from a user interface, this is far more productive than saying, hey, open up the little script field and type in this magic code. Because your low code people are even get confused by date times. I get confused by date and times. They're like the nemesis of coding. For whatever reason, dates and times, especially when you incorporate time zones, are a real mess. Let's look at it, putting our new CTB math, add 2 numbers together, or multiply 2 numbers together. And I am going to take a couple of inputs. Let's do this, because I want to put this into an API script, or into a UI action to do a multiply. Let's add our 2 inputs. So this will be unimaginatively again, number 1. Sorry, sound like Captain Picard. Make it so, number 1. Number 2 is an integer. Those should both be mandatory, and I need an output, which will be producto. Product, integer. I know this seems like it's very repetitive because it is such a simple example. Don't let it be. So multiply 2 integers. Zoom out a little bit so I can see my data pills. I wonder why these came out in a weird order. But you know what? Since multiply is, what's the word? Is it transitive or commutative? I'm testing my old brain again. It works either way. Number 2 goes there. I can then, next thing, flow logic, assign subflow outputs. This is kind of like the actions output. I'm going to pick the product, which came from the above definition here. When I said I need to use an output, that's where that list comes from. And the data you're going to use is the product from my custom action. Wow, Chuck, that was pretty hefty. Let's test our subflow. I could, since it's very simple and all I wanted to do is multiply 2 numbers, I could call the action directly from the flow API. I like to do things more at the subflow level because there may be logic involved. Like if the value is greater than this, do that. So test number 10 and 150. I should get 1500. I hope. We'll call the custom action. Find the outputs. 1500. Hooray! We have success. This subflow is ready to go. And what can you do with a subflow? Why do I like subflow so much? Because once I publish that, I can then take it and go to this little menu on the top right and say, create code snippet. And I want the server code for this. I copy that, although you can use this little button to do the same thing. Copy to clipboard. And if I go over to, say, Studio, and go to the app that I built a couple of weeks ago for managing parts libraries or parts orders, switch app to my parts app, and create a simple UI action. Create server development UI action. I'm going to make a simple recalculation function on the part form. So recalc. Come on. On the table. Part. Where is it? Oh, it's line. Sorry. The line item. I don't necessarily need this on an insert because it's going to get confused. No, I could do that on a new record. I'm going to use it as a form link. Let's make it a big bright button. Make it a big bright green button for this style. And then take that code that I pasted and put it in here. And my number is going to be current.price. You're going, Chuck, this is a long way around to multiply 2 numbers. I could have done this in the UI action in like 3 lines of code. But that's 3 lines of code you would have had to maintain. 3 lines of code that might have confused somebody else and not reusable from app to app to app to app. So by having my little toolbox of multiply 2 integers, anyone's going to be able to use that over and over very easily. UTY, I believe, was the other field. And then my product is going to be here. So I want to assign current.amount. Yeah, it was amount equals product current.update. This I probably could have done in the subflow as well. You know what? Why don't we do that? No, it's crazy. I'm doing all this extra scripting. The only thing I really need in here is action.set redirect URL current to stay on the current page after this UI action runs.
So you want to do the update in the subflow?
Why not? Then I need to pass a current, don't I?
Yeah, because the subflow, it looks like really just exists to multiply any 2 numbers together, right?
Yep. Because this was a test multiply. You're right. This subflow might be more accurately named update line item amount or something.
Yeah.
In which case, here's another practice we like to do. We're making an audible on the field. This was not part of my original plan. We don't need the price. That's going to really irk one of the actions. We don't even need an output. Not all, you know what? Let's keep the output just in case. I like having some kind of output. It's like a return in your functions. Let's add this, and we will call this line item. And it is going to be a reference. This makes this flow very specific to this type of record, which is not necessarily a bad thing. Try to keep your actions from being very specific. Make them do little atomic things.
Yeah, your actions can be real generic, and then the subflow does something specific, but since it's in a subflow, you could trigger this from like a line item or the parent record or a UI action, and then you could also trigger it from a flow.
Exactly.
So yeah, I think this is a good use case for a subflow.
Now this lost its data pill, so it went back to the default values. Now my data pills become, and I don't have to remember what my field names were called because it just becomes price. Oh, that's a decimal? We have a problem, Houston.
Can you?
Oh, you're right. Yeah, prices on that app were not integers. We go write a little no code and convert it to an integer. That's what happens when you make a call on the field. Sometimes I like the fact that you can tell right away this is from my little toolbox.
Yeah.
Yep. Having that icon on the app is really handy when it comes to making spokes. Okay, should we go back to our original game plan?
Do we have we don't have like a convert to integer?
A data pill function?
Yeah.
I don't think so.
And I guess you couldn't even drag it in there.
No. Plus it would throw off the titles. I mean, if you were multiplying $1.50 and it said, well, the integer part of that is $1.
Yeah.
Like, well, that kind of makes a difference when I'm placing orders. Darn. Okay, back to the original plan. I don't think I deleted my UI action yet. So let's just get rid of that. A lot of rework in this app already, and it's not even released. Number 1, integer. Wow, the fingers are doing really well today. Mandatory, add. Number 2, integer. I hope the concept was there that passing an entire record is really handy. Number 1 times number 2. I guess I could have. I didn't save or publish this yet. What am I doing? Why did I just say leave? There was nothing. I just realized I didn't really do anything to that. Let's open up the subflow again, just to make sure. I didn't really. If I didn't save, then it should still be. Yeah, it's exactly like I left it. I forgot. I already published it so that I could use it in the UI action. Okay. Well, a lot of running around back and forth. Sorry for the disorganized brain on this. Current dot amount equals product current dot update. All right, so I add a little thing to the code. I'm going to use the synchronous version of this, which says in foreground, because I'd like to see it run in real time. It's going to take a second or two longer to pick up and run. That's really the only difference. If you want to change it to an async, you'd say in background. But again, if this goes and runs off async, when do you get your product back? Is it calling this as a callback function? I don't know. That's not a real warm, fuzzy feeling I have with UI actions and async subflows.
Mm-hmm.
I think we have a UI action that we can actually use on the line item. And I probably just put that in the wrong spoke. Nope. Okay, it was in the right app.
Nice.
That happens sometimes. It's like managing update sets. Watch whatever you're doing if you're doing it in Studio, you have less risk of putting something in the wrong container. The parts, open, go open an order. And I should see if I open one of these records, a new recalc button. Yay, big green recalc button. And say quantity goes from 1 to 10. Recalc. And the amount up here in the upper right, of course, it's got a whole bunch of cross-scope permissions that it just gave me, is correct. 750. I like it. Just don't put in a price of 7.50 because I'm multiplying two integers together. What do you think will happen?
Good question. Oh,
I mean, the price is that field. Yeah, it
There you go.
completely,
It
it
turned it
hacked
into an
off the
integer.
0.5. So you're saying, but Chuck, what do I do if I want to use an action that does maybe other things? This is very specific to multiplying two integers. I did have a solution. I was going to build it for you, but I think in the interest of time, I'll just show you the one that I built earlier. Let's open up my action from the CTUtils. Where was it? CTUtils spoke, show matching. And I have one called, here's an interesting one. And this is a point I wanted to bring up before I go into the other mathematic functions. I often need to get a system property into my flow. Now, I wrote this about 3 years ago. Something changed in the system because my input is a reference to the system property table. But if you look in a new flow, let's go here just to mess with it. Input, create input, name, reference. You will note that system properties is not available. That seems to have happened in the last several releases because it was there because I built that other one to get a system property. If you want to build a spoke full of global functions, system property will show up. Many system tables will. So keep that in mind that system tables aren't available to scoped applications. They used to be, but they're not now. If you wanted to make any of these functions, and it might make more sense if you have a general toolbox to do this in global. Something to think about. Where was I? I was going to show you the other mathematic function. I made two, simple decimal math and simple integer math. And when I look at these, I'm just going to pop these out on a flow, show you what they look like in action. Action, bow tie. I just look for the bow tie. CTUtils, simple decimal math. Okay, same kind of thing. Takes a number, asks you for an operation. I don't know what happened to my operation choice list. That was weird. My simple integer math have it? Did my actions break since I looked at them a couple of weeks ago? Simple integer math. That almost looks like a reference field. Yeah. My choices are gone. What happened to that? Anyway, the idea is you take two numbers and you can say, I want to divide, I want to add, etc. Now, the inputs for simple integer math are obviously integers. The inputs for simple decimal math are obviously decimals. So it's all about the data types, and that's why these are very specific functions. The outputs are really driving what I'm naming these and how they're used. Let's go take a look at the guts of one of those to show you how I made that a little more universal than just multiply two numbers. So if I look at simple decimal math, these are very, very similar to each other. I want to see what happened to my choices. They are there. Weirdness. Okay. It takes two floating point numbers, passes them in the same way, input, 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 but it also passes in this operation. And the value of that operation, if you didn't see it real quick, is actually a word: add, subtract, multiply, divide. Because in JavaScript, these could get you into a mess of trouble. Even though they are strings, I'm not going to chance it. It also makes it a little more readable when your script says case, add, case, subtract, case, multiply. Okay, this is a switch statement. If you're not familiar with it, I got a JavaScript series for you. So take the inputs, parse out the floating part of them in case there's a $sign, in case there's commas, whatever might be in there. Initialize a default answer or output. Do the multiplication, do the addition. So if it says subtract, take the two numbers and subtract them. That becomes the answer. Come on, there's one other one in here, percent. Not many people use this, but if you want to find the remainder of two numbers, like you say 12% 5, you will get 2. It's like doing a divide and then taking the remainder. So 12 divided by 5, of course, is 2. But 2 times 5 is only 10. Your remainder is 2. So you will get, that's a bad example because they both end up as 2. If I said 13 mod 5, I would get 3. So sometimes that's a nice thing to have. Do you know where, quick quiz for you, Brad. We didn't plan this. Where would you use a mod operator? What's a good common use case for that?
Ooh, it's a good question. I can't think of anything off the top of my head.
I like to use it instead of a rolling counter, or you could just use a rolling counter. If you're going through a list of things and you want every third line to be maybe a CSS style of green, you could say, look, every third line, well, I can tell when it's the third line because the mod will be 0. And I just say mod 3. Instead of going, if I is greater than 3, then I equals 0 and I plus plus, and you're resetting and instead of going 0, 1, 2, 0, 1, 2, 0, 1, 2, you can just go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, and you always know what the mod is because you can do that mod and go, you're either going to get a 0, 1, or a 2.
Nice, yeah.
Handy little trick. Just thought I'd throw that one in there. But this is a little more complex, but you can see it's still very specific to, let's do some math on 2 decimal numbers, or let's do some math on 2 other numbers. I've got a couple of these in the library. I'll share that. I thought it was an update set out there somewhere. I know I've got a GitHub repo that has these specific functions in there. I'll try to get that into the description of the show notes for this. We've added it to a UI action. I don't know, using the Flow API. Anything else that you wanted to take a look at or show, or secrets or tips or tricks?
No, I would say definitely, we've used only actions and subflows. And if you are, working in Flow Designer, I would think you probably want to be using more subflows than flows. Start in a subflow. And then it's something that you can reuse across different
Agreed.
And areas. So.
Yeah, don't dismiss them so quickly. I kind of went by it really quickly, but remember I named my spoke CTB spoke for that little descriptive value, and you see it on the list of apps. But when I see it on this list, it's just CTB. That's where it strips off that name, so I'm not getting CTUtil spoke, CTB spoke, customer service spoke, customer service. It's like, what? Why are these all saying spoke, 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 spoke? It's a bit like when, what was it, Steve Jobs was looking at one of the first menu options for the Macintosh, and he saw all of the little clover icons. Said, no, no, no. That's not going to work here. So too many of a good thing is not a good thing. Let me stop the screen share then, and we will do a quick summary recap and announcements. Get this back on the right screen.
All right. Well, thanks, Chuck. That was great. It was good to create some actions and subflows and call them from a UI action. Anything else you wanna add and wrap it up there?
I just hope that gives people an idea of not so much inline script in the fields, or not saying, oh, I need to go write a small script include. Think of actions and subflows as the new script includes. More consumable by more people without having to resort to script. You still get to write the script behind the scene to do the logic, but it becomes very, I won't say immutable, but less volatile as time goes on if you stick to making these small and specific. and for the purpose. If it's specific to a particular app, put it in the scope of that app. But if it's something more general that you think, a lot of people are going to want to get a property, I should probably put that in a global spoke and make it available to everybody. So I've got this collection or this toolbox. I'm really curious to see what other ideas people have about this toolbox of things. Simple math is one of the first ones that I came up with. Getting a property is another one. But what ideas do you have out there that are sort of cross application that you haven't seen in Flow Designer yet that you would like to see and could quickly build out? That's what I'm curious to see, if this sparks any ideas in the community. Any announcements, Brad?
Yeah, just before we get to announcements, it's a really good way to help enable more people to do things in ServiceNow. So people that are low code users, you showed your date time function action that you had there, and you're just allowing people that just are never going to do date time conversions and things in a script. But now all of a sudden those people can do that through Flow Designer. So this is, if you're considering citizen development or some sort of distributed development model where you have people that aren't used to writing script in ServiceNow, this is a really good way to enable those people to have more power to automate more things. So really powerful. Think about new things you can do with actions. There are, if you just kind of sit down and think about it, there's all sorts of, things you could do that may be really specific to your company, that, ServiceNow is not going to put out a spoke to do something really specific like that. So yeah, a lot of options and a lot of power there.
You know what? I think we ought to make that the little collection that I've got now with the date and the math and the property, make that available as a public repo. People can fork it and contribute back to it. That will get some community juices going. So I definitely will put the link to that repo, the GitHub repo, in the notes for this episode.
Nice. Well, one announcement is that we do have a special live coding happy hour on Thursday. It's going to be developer MVP led. We will give more details. So we'll probably publish that stream today or tomorrow. So stay tuned for that. Thursday afternoons, US time, again, in the summer, not Friday afternoons. So stay tuned for that. It's going to be a fun one. Yeah. Anything else, Chuck?
Tech Now episode coming up on the 24th, I can't remember, 24th, 26th, 29th. I think it's the 29th this month, where Charn Lin will be joining us to show us some DevOps stuff. So how can you automate where we are on our journey? We're certainly not done telling our DevOps story. So if you've got any input or insights or want to learn more about it, how it can automate your deployment cycle, your pipeline, that's a good one to watch. Looking forward to that very much. And then it's all hands on deck for the upcoming Rome Tech Now at the end of July. So early access is coming up quick. We're learning as much as we can, as fast as we can for you. We'll share that. Look for any developer meetups. That's going to be interesting. We're starting to get back into that in-person event. So Brad and I are working on a plan to meet you face to face again at some point soon. So stay tuned for those announcements as well. Kind of give a little teaser there. Did I miss anything?
I don't think so. We had a breakpoint last week.
We had a breakpoint last week, yes, about Glide Record. We've got one coming up next week on effective presentations with Julian Mill. The preparation, we're going to talk about the preparation of doing an effective presentation. He leads he's like Shelly and Dan. He's part of the Certified Master Architect program. So he knows, and we're passing out some of those tips from the CMA program directly to you for free so that you can be a better presenter. In fact, I think at one point, I didn't name any specifics, but I think I bashed on a VP for not knowing how to put PowerPoint in the right presentation mode. It's little things like that, that you know it when you see it, like, come on, learn how to run your tools. You didn't prepare. It frustrates me, and you don't want to be that person, trust me. So we've got some great tips coming to you for that, and I'm sure that there's a plan to have more presentation tips in Breakpoint coming up.
All right. Well, thanks, Chuck. Thanks for driving, and thanks everybody for joining us. And we will see you all again soon.
Take care, everybody. Stay safe.
All right. Bye all.